and I talk to young kids about this. Young kids are being taught to worship the computer chip and AI. They're being taught that carbon-based life in general, and humans specifically as carbon-based life, that we are flawed. Flawed. We're flawed as a
Absolutely. There's something
species.
wrong with us. Yes.
Yeah. And among those flaws are the things that we cherish as a species. Our ability to have empathy and sympathy and compassion. Our emotion is considered to be among those flaws because it clouds sometimes our logic and it clouds our thinking. And I agree, it can, but I think it means that we learn to better utilize the gift rather than to sterilize ourselves away from that gift.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome to the podcast that you know as Take Back Your Mind. Open your heart, take back your mind. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center. And every week I get to have a lively conversation with individuals who are actually making a difference in the world, rippling with their energy, their love, their intelligence, their beauty, and have taken back their own mind to a great capacity and are able to inspire others. And today I have my brother Gregg Braden with me. And we see each other over the years a lot on the road. He's spoken here at Agape as well. And we just missed each other at the Gaia event there in Boulder, Colorado. I opened it up, he closed it up. But now we're together in real time, so to speak. Welcome, Gregg.
Brother Michael Beckwith, it is so joyous to see you today. You know, I'm on a media tour, a multi-city in-studio media tour, and I took a couple of days off. I came to my home here in our studio just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's a media day, and I get a sheet that lists all my interviews, and I saw your name on there, and I got a big smile that started this morning, and it hasn't stopped because you know I love you, I love your work, I love your heart, and I love that we're bookends at these conferences. You know, you open it and I close it, and whatever happens in between, it is what it is.
Sometimes we have Q&A and it's all very beautiful. I had the same feeling when I looked at my chart yesterday. I saw that you were on for today, for Friday. And I said, oh, good. I'm going to get to see Gregg. I missed him in Boulder.
Well, I know, this is completely unscripted. It's a dance, brother. I'm going to follow your lead, but I know it's always good. It's always good. And I'm honored. You know, the truth is, Michael, I just want to say this. The truth is you don't know what I'm going to say. And there's a level of trust when you invite me into your community to share me with your community. And that means a lot to me. So thank you for that in advance. And love to everybody that's out there. Thank you all for tuning in.
Absolutely. It's always good with you, man. You've been, matter of fact, let me just give a brief introduction of you for people who may not know who you are. 5-time New York Times bestselling author, scientist, and a pioneer in the emerging paradigm bridging science, social policy, and human potential. From 1979 to 1990, he worked as a problem solver. Check this out, for Fortune 500 companies. His research resulted in the 2003 discovery of intelligent information encoded in the human genome, and the 2010 application of fractal time to predict future occurrences of past events. His work has led to 17 film credits, 12 award-winning books, now published in over 43 languages. He was a 2020 nominee for the prestigious Templeton Prize, established to honor outstanding individuals who have devoted their talents to expanding our vision of human purpose and ultimate reality. He has presented his discoveries in over 34 countries on 6 continents, has been invited to speak at the United Nations, Fortune 500 countries, and the U.S. military. And he has been at our Revelation Conference at Agape, and we're buds. That's Gregg. Listen, your new book, Pure Human, The Hidden Truth of Our Divinity, Power, and Destiny, What compelled you to write this book at this time in human history?
You know, that's a beautiful place to start, Michael. This book, first of all, I just want to say I did something different with this book than I have in the past. I actually took 7 months off with just a couple of exceptions that I was contractually committed to do. I took 7 months to write this book. Typically, I write it on airplanes and airports and hotels, you know,
Hmm.
and I felt that the magnitude of this message warranted the time to really find just the right words. It's a very powerful message. Ultimately, this book is a celebration of our humanness.
Yes.
I'm hoping that the reader walks away with, at the very least, a deeper appreciation for what it means to be human, and maybe even a sense of pride,
Mm.
because there is a concerted effort right now. This isn't in the future, Michael. It's happening right this minute to replace our human biology with technology, to
Right.
replace the human body with artificial intelligence, computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the blood, nano circuits circulating through the body, RFID chips under the skin. I mean, it goes on and on. And there are consequences
Hmm.
to this. There is, I think, some of our, you know, I love having these conversations with you because you have a very informed audience. So we don't have to go to ground zero.
Right. Right.
I
Absolutely.
think most of your viewers know who Ray Kurzweil is. He's a futurist science fiction author. Currently, he is a director of artificial intelligence development at Google. He came out with a book entitled The Singularity.
Hmm.
And what he is saying very clearly is that unless we change our thinking quickly and the trajectory that we are on, we very probably are the last generation of pure humans
Mm.
that this world, all worlds, will ever know. Because by the year 2030, 5 years from now, when you talk to someone in the grocery store or on the street, you're going to be talking to a hybrid of some degree between biology and some technology that they have accepted into their bodies. This
Right.
book is a description. It's actually two themes in the book. One is the awareness that this is happening. The second half of the book are the new scientific discoveries that are telling us, man, we are not what we've been told. We're so much more than we've been led to believe. Michael, we're probably more than we've even allowed ourselves to believe about ourselves. And when we embrace those discoveries, what we find is in many cases we meet and even exceed the capacities of the technology that we're being encouraged to accept into our bodies.
Absolutely.
So that's what the book's about. There's another deeply spiritual element, and we've got about 50 minutes. I don't know how deep you want to go with this.
Yeah, this is rock and roll, man, because what you're saying is something that I talk about often here at Agape, and that is the right use of technology is beautiful. It's wonderful, but it's more like a prosthetic to our
Yeah,
own inner powers that we're not even activating because we're relying a lot on the prosthetic aspect of AI. And I think you're covering that very
yeah,
well.
I do, and there's something even deeper. You know, I'm a scientist. I'm a degreed earth scientist, a strong background, I'm a geologist, strong background in math, physics, computer science, archaeology, cosmology, and I say that because it's that multidisciplinary background. It helps me stay on top of what's going on here. I'm also a systems thinker, Michael, and that
Hmm.
means systems thinker looks at the big picture to see the context and then leaves the big picture to zero in on the nanosecond right now. What does my life mean in that big picture? So here's the big picture. I'm going to use a word that I know your community is very comfortable with this word. A lot of scientists don't like it, and a lot of your colleagues and mine have trouble with this word. The word is divinity,
Oh,
human human
yes.
divinity, and a lot of people link the word divinity with religion, and I
Right.
can I can see why, because there are schools of divinity that make that connection. But here's the thing: the definition, one of the definitions of divinity, I love this. 3 words. It's the ability to transcend perceived limitations, and that's
Yes.
it. But
Yes.
transcend means not just deal with it, become more than those limitations. And this, I love this next part, Michael. Perceived. We may be living limitations that aren't even real, that we are indoctrinated and conditioned to accept by our family, friends, society, culture, false science, politics. So we've all seen this happen. So when we talk about divinity, what we're talking about is the ability to be the best version of ourselves. And let me give some examples of what divinity is. Our ability to imagine freely, that is a divine, an expression of our divinity. Our
Yes.
ability to imagine, to create, to innovate, our ability to love without fear, our ability to forgive without expectation that something's going to come back to us, our ability to heal is only possible if we see ourselves and believe that we are worthy of that healing. These are all expressions of divinity. So there's a reason that I'm sharing this with you, because the effort to replace our humanness with technology is an effort to deny us access to our divinity. All right. And what we have just done, and we're going to tie into this, you said we can go deep. So now I'm going to go to
No,
the big.
you're speaking my language, and you're definitely speaking to the language of the community. Definitely. You're right. You're
Uh,
right there, brother.
well, I'm happy that, and I suspected that would be the case with this conversation, because all of this, it's no secret that this is not business as usual in the world. There's
Mm.
something happening, and for many people, even my colleagues, there's a lot of fear because they think the world is coming apart at the seams for no apparent reason. They think these are spontaneous wars, spontaneous social uprisings, and all that.
Hmm.
There is a structure to what is happening. There's a design to what's happening. There is an expiration date. And we can talk about why, but the powers that be have put that date about 5 years from now,
Hmm.
about the year 2030. By the year 2030, there are proposals that are being written, there are laws being enacted to remake the world outside of us, which we've always been able to do, but now for the first time, to remake the world inside of us in ways that we've never seen. And this is where the technology comes in: AI, computer chips of the brain, all of that. So here's why this is important. All of this isn't happening in a vacuum. Michael,
Right.
we are all casualties of an ancient battle between, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm a scholar of the scrolls. I began studying them back in the 90s when they were freed up to public viewing. And you can't make this stuff up. The Dead Sea Scrolls found in Qumran, outside of the Holy Lands in Israel, and the Dead Sea area, 11 caves discovered 1946, 47. You can't make this up. It was in the
Right.
first cave, in the first vase, in the first cave, and the first scroll that came out of the first vase that describes what's happening in our lives right now. And although it was discovered in 46, 47, it was not freed to the public until 1991. The Vatican lobbied, politicians lobbied, money was spent to prevent that message from being shared. So you got to say, what could possibly be in a 2,500-year-old text that would warrant that kind of energy? The answer is in that first scroll. It's called the War Scroll, WAR. The
Hmm.
War Scroll describes the conditions that are defining our world today and have
Mm.
throughout history.
Right.
And these are the exact words: that we are all engaged, knowingly or not, in a fundamental battle between what they call the sons of darkness and the sons of light,
Hmm.
or what we in contemporary terms call a battle between good and evil.
Hmm.
Now, I shared this in a public a conference recently, and there was a woman that was very offended by the sons of darkness and sons of light because she felt it was exclusive of female, of the
Yeah.
feminine.
Right.
2,500 years ago, they weren't dealing with gender the way we are today. It is inclusive. Sons of darkness, sons of light is humankind,
Right.
male and female.
Right.
So this battle. Now, I was born and raised in a rural community in northern Missouri back in the 1950s, and we would joke about good and evil. There was a little devil on my shoulder, had
Right.
pitchfork and horns, and he was
Right.
all red, and angel, and man, they were going back and forth, and what I want to say is, and I think we all know this is not a metaphor. Evil is very real in our world, and it plays out in ways that are very deceptive. There's technological evil. There's
Mhm.
biological evil. There's kinetic evil in Ukraine and the Nova Music Festival. Those are kinetic expressions of evil. There's
Mhm.
psychological evil.
Mhm.
And we are all engaged in this fundamental battle, and it comes about in different levels. So now this is why I wanted to talk about divinity. The goal of the battle between good and evil is to deny us our divinity.
Right.
Evil triumphs when we are denied our divinity. In other words, when we are denied access to the deep truth of the beauty that allows human expression, once again, imagination, innovation, creativity, love,
Love.
forgiveness,
Mhm.
compassion, empathy, sympathy, all of these things are expressions of our divinity. Evil wants to deny, to veil and deny us access to those. The transhuman movement to replace our humanness with technology effectively is a form of evil, because now we have a benchmark. I want to establish this.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a nebulous concept. What is evil? Evil is anything that denies us our divinity.
Yes.
All right. So when we look at the technology itself is not good, bad, right, or wrong. As a scientist, I've seen beautiful application. Let me just give an example. The FDA just approved computer chips in the human brain that allow the brain to communicate directly with the computer by thinking. Okay,
Right.
no keyboard, no cables. And there are people that have a hard time with that. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. If you are a man or a woman that has given your life to your nation and you've lost arms and legs in the process, and you come home and you get a prosthetic and a computer chip in the brain that allows you to hold your babies in your arms and to brush your own teeth and comb your own hair and feed yourself, man, what a beautiful thing.
Right.
That's a specific use. The proposals on the table are to implant those chips into the brain of every newborn by the year beginning the year 2030 in mass. And people say to me, well, what's the problem with that? There is a an adage in biology, and we've all heard this before. It says, use it or lose it.
Mhm.
When we
Right.
replace our natural biology with technology that performs the functions that we would typically do naturally, our abilities, our natural abilities, our biology, our cells, our DNA begin to atrophy in one generation. And then you pass that on epigenetically to your
Right.
kids. And pretty soon, the things that used to be cherished qualities in our humanness become a vestige of our past because our
Right.
bodies think we don't need. This is how you lose a species. So, in
Right.
a very real sense, the transhuman movement is an evil movement in the sense that it denies us access to our divinity. And there are
Right.
reasons for that. And of course, there are people with propensity for greed and power and control, of course,
Yes. Yes.
all fall into this. But it's not the technology; it's the thinking underlying the technology. So,
Right.
so the book identifies these things so that we can become aware and discern. Discern is not to judge, but to discern that they're in our field. And then the new discoveries, Michael, are just mind blowing,
Mhm.
showing us the capacities of our humanness, our brain, our neurons, I mean, I'm going to describe some of these experiments in just a few minutes, but what they're telling us is that when we embrace the truth of our greatest potential, we don't need a lot of those artificial components in our bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a celebration of our divinity. So this is where there's a deeply spiritual component to all of this. And it is that fundamental battle between good and evil. We're going to get through this. We're all going to get through it. 5 years from now, 2031, let's you and I have a reunion podcast. But
Yeah. I'm gonna have you.
for
I'm gonna have you come here and do a. And we're gonna do a conference together.
I would be honored. But we get through it. But here's the thing, and this is the spiritual component: is what do we become
Hmm.
as we go through these challenges that we've never faced before? Do we succumb to the deepest primal instincts of hate and fear,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and respond in that way? Or do we embrace these challenges from the love of the strength and the power that we know our divinity affords us? And
Right.
this is what we're exploring right now. I mean, heads up, just a perfect example, and everybody's seen this. We just went through an election, and I have friends and family and colleagues who are have allowed themselves to be so blinded by their hate for one way of thinking that they cannot see the beauty and the potentials and the possibilities that are blooming all around them that have nothing to do with this election, but
Absolutely.
their tunnel vision on this. So here's a perfect example. They're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. What have we become? What have they become? Have they succumbed to this primal instinct for revenge and hate and fear? And
Separation.
if they have, then it's a human response, but we are given the divine gift of choice. And it's a choice to hate, and it's a choice to love. And I think this is what we're all waking up to in the extremes of the world. We're waking up to these things. Do we make the choices from our hate and fear of what happens if we don't, or do we make the choices from our love of our
Absolutely.
family and our community and what we know is possible in our hearts? Two very, very different motivating principles. They may lead to the same outcome, but what did it do to us? What did it make us as we get to that outcome? And that's what this battle between good and evil is all about.
Absolutely.
There's one more component I want to share, because when you use the word battle, I'm, I'm
Yeah.
a I'm a student of learning to listen, and I listen to my audiences, and I'm still learning from my audiences. And one of the things I found, Michael, is when you use the word battle, there's an old idea of opposing forces in a battle. So good and evil, opposing forces. These are the old ideas that keep us stuck in the perpetual fight and in
Mm-hmm.
perpetual fear. Because in this battle between good and evil, the sons of darkness, sons of light, we're not trying to win. What we're trying to do is triumph.
Mm-hmm.
We triumph. So now you go back. What is the purpose of the battle? Is to deny us our divinity. We triumph by living our divinity, by living the best version of ourselves, imagining
That's the
freely,
best. That's the best revenge. Yeah.
sharing the ideas with one another, uh, healing because we have the capacity to heal in the way that we were designed, empathy, sympathy, compassion for those who are having a hard time. These are all expressions of our divinity. When we live those, you have triumphed over the evil, but you're not fighting the evil. It's a really beautiful concept.
Well, you're
Really,
talking about transcendence.
yeah.
In one of your books, you talked about a condensate where two things can occupy the same space at the same time, but vibrating at different frequencies.
You
So
read my book. You read my book.
absolutely. And so and so basically when we're transcending, when we're in that dynamic of choosing love or peace, harmony, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, we may be in a relationship with someone that's not choosing that, but we're at a different frequency
Yeah.
and we are triumphing. We're not battling. We're actually triumphing because, as you just said, we're becoming the next great version and vision of ourself. So there's an expansion of awareness. I really
Yeah.
appreciate what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, even though the outcome, I mean, to the three-dimensional physical eye, the outcome may be the same. The
Hmm.
spiritual battle is what do we allow the events that life brings to our doorstep? What do we allow those events to make us become, to turn
Yeah.
us into?
Yes.
And when we are reduced to the levels of hate and revenge and fear, and I'm just going to back up a little bit, because I know where this comes from, and I think most of our viewers will agree. There's a lot of hurt in the world today,
Hurt,
un,
woundedness,
unresolved
unresolved.
hurt and
Yes.
woundedness. Unresolved hurt uh, becomes fear, and fear is often expressed as hate. So when we see the levels of hate that we see in the world, what we're really looking at is our brothers and sisters, our global family. Every one of them, even if we don't like them, I think we all love them. And we love them in their hurt. What we're seeing is we have a deeply wounded world
Yeah.
that has never been taught how to resolve the hurt. And so that hate is the expression of that. And this is part of this fundamental battle between good and evil. The evil reduces us to these primal instincts, because when we're in that state, we are vulnerable and susceptible to the ideas and the agendas of others. And man,
Right.
there is no shortage of agendas between now and 2030 to remake this world. Here's what's different. We've always had visions of people that want to remake the world. For the first time in human history, we now have the technology, not just to remake the world out there, but they want to remake the world in here. And the
Right.
only way to achieve the goals that we're looking at from the United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals, quote, sustainable, unquote, development goals, or the World Economic Forum, or any of those, the only way they can achieve those goals is to remake human biology by indoctrinating us to accept all the things that we're talking about. And, you know, Michael, I know it's happening, and I'm still in awe of how
Mhm.
sexy the marketing is,
Mhm.
and
Oh yeah.
how attractive.
N-
There,
n-
we're going to be inundated with what we're going to be told is that we'll be safer if
mhm.
we accept technology in our bodies, that we'll be healthier, and that we're going to have a better and easier world. And the marketing that I'm seeing that's given to young kids on YouTube, I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
More convenient. I mean, I saw a lady on a talk show bragging about the fact that she has this technology in her wrist that allows her to just go buy something at a supermarket. You know, all of her credit materials in her wrist, and
You know,
she's bragging about it. You know.
well, the European nation of Sweden is leading the world right now in the acceptance of some of this technology, and the RFID chips are part of that. There is a commercial showing, here's a guy, he's walking down the street, the birds are singing, blue sky. He has no suitcase, no briefcase, no billfold, anything. He says he's never been freer in his life. And he goes to work, and he shows his wrist to get into
Yeah.
the security door at work. He goes to the grocery store, pays, he has 15 RFID chips in his body, 15 each. He's got one to start the car, one for the security at work. He's got the bank accounts that tie in so he can buy his groceries and buy his gas. And this is an example of how it's being made to look really attractive. Or here's another one. I was with a group of young kids. The FDA last year approved the uh, the Neuralink, the computer chip in the human brain that allows the brain to communicate with the computer without using a keyboard. It's all done by thought.
Right.
And so young kids, I got young kids, and when I say young, they're teens, early 20s, and they're saying, Mr. Braden, and I said, please just call me Greg. And they said, okay, Greg, you're telling us that if we get a computer chip in our brain, we can play Grand Theft Auto 2 and never have to touch a keyboard to do it. And I said, yep, that's what they're telling you. And they say, sweet, bring it on, because they've never been given a reason to cherish the sacredness of their humanness. They've never been given a reason to respect the sanctity and the sovereignty of the human body. And
Yes.
now the studies are showing, this is really interesting. When I was a kid growing up in the Midwest, 1950s, we were told that when you're born, you get a fixed number of brain cells, and that's it.
I
And
remember that's that old science. I remember.
yeah, and that was the leverage when I got to college. I went to Colorado State. They said, okay, man, every beer you drink, you're going to lose brain cells. So don't drink any more beers. And now we know that's not true, that
Right.
we are producing new brain cells every moment of our lives until the last breath on this planet. It's coming from the hippocampus in the human brain, but there's a catch. Here's the catch. Unless those new cells are engaged in a meaningful way within about 7 days, within about a week, they will atrophy and die.
Right.
When you've got chips in the brain that are performing functions for you, the parts of the brain that used to perform those functions believe they are no longer needed, and they begin to atrophy in one generation. And that principle applies throughout the body. It applies to the immune system. If you've got chemicals that mimic the immune system, then the body says, oh, maybe you don't need me anymore. Reproductive system,
Right.
same thing is happening. So nobody's telling our young people these things. And part of the book, again, I would never attempt to convince or persuade. I want to inform people.
Right.
We,
Right. Absolutely.
we need to know what we're giving away before we give it away, because once we embark upon this path, this transhuman path is what it's called, you can't go back. I've had people say to me, well, let's just try it for a year. If it doesn't work, then we'll go back.
Take the
Here's
chips
what
out.
happens. Yeah. Well, no, here's what happens. The human body, once it encounters those new conditions, it morphs and adapts to accommodate that. So it's no longer the old body. You can't go back because it doesn't exist.
Right.
So this is
You've
a one.
mutated. You've unconsciously mutated the body into something else.
Yep.
It's a
So
mutation.
what I see happening, Michael, I mean, it's a mixed bag. And what I'm seeing right now is fascinating to me. I love to study people, social policy. I'm seeing two parallel societies emerge within our own communities, sometimes within this under the same roof, because the kids are going one way and the parents are going another way.
Hmm.
One of those societies is all in on everything. They're saying, man, bring it on. Bring on the tech. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to breathe it. I'm going to put it in my brain. Right on. And then I was on tour. I came home last week for a couple of days, and then I leave again. And I went to my local food co-op. I belong to a little co-op where we get all of our organic food. And that's where I get to see my neighbors. And
Hmm.
they're really, really good people, Michael. They're
Hmm.
solid.
Right.
What a lot of people would call salt of the earth.
Right.
So they're not having this conversation. They don't have time because they're working three jobs, trying to make ends meet, trying to take care of their kids. But they know something's not right. And they talk to me in the aisle. They say, Gregg, something's not right. The world's changing too fast. They said, we need to slow down and get back to basics. And this is the other parallel society. So they're pulling their kids out of public schools so
Ah.
they can teach them the values that will actually serve the kids, not the ideologies that they're being indoctrinated into. They're
Right.
growing their own food. They're drilling wells because they don't trust the city water.
Right. Right.
And they're rejecting the technology. So those two extremes, I think, are unsustainable
Right. Yeah.
in the
There's a
long
middle.
run.
I imagine there's a middle ground.
I think this is exactly where we're going to go. I think we're going to do what humans do. We're going to check each other out
Hmm.
because we like to do that. We're going to say who's happier, who's healthier, whose kids are better adjusted, whose lives are more fulfilled. And I think that will inform us in terms of where we go. And I agree with you, Michael. I think there's a middle ground where we're never going to let the technology go. I think we will allow the technology to serve us rather than enslave us, which is
That's
what
the
the
key.
transhuman movement is going to do.
Yeah. But what I appreciate about what you're saying, in substance, you're reminding people that we are divine, and that in our divineness, we are really unlimited. We're illimitable beings. We've never reached the end of who we can be. As we become more and more conscious, that becomes our quest. Our quest is to evolve and unfold and become the greater version of ourselves, and
Yeah.
to activate within ourselves that which the computers do. I mean, our brain is more powerful than any computer. And so that which is called evil is not only seeking to prevent that, but is also dumbing people down on a
Yeah.
consistent basis so they're more easily controlled. So
I
that,
love it. I love it when you talk that way, Reverend Michael,
you know,
because that's it, and this isn't just my opinion. I mean,
yeah.
for example, when scientists look at, and I talk to young kids about this, young kids are being taught to worship the computer chip and AI. They're being taught that carbon-based life in general and humans specifically as carbon-based life, that we are flawed. FLAWED. We're flawed as a
Absolutely. There's something
species.
wrong with us. Yes.
Yeah, and among those flaws are the things that we cherish as a species. Our ability to have empathy and sympathy and compassion, our emotion is considered to be among those flaws because it clouds sometimes our logic and it clouds our thinking. And I agree, it can, but I think it means that we learn to better utilize the gift rather than to sterilize ourselves away from that gift. So scientists, they begin to look at this. You take a computer chip. Are they fast? Absolutely. Are they efficient? Absolutely efficient. Are they scalable? You can only scale a computer chip until it reaches the limit of the physics of the stuff it's made of.
Mm.
So if it's a silicon chip, those atoms are only they're always going to be the same distance from one another because that's silicon. And the information will only travel so fast. So they're fast, efficient, but their scalability is finite. They can only go so far. Now,
Right.
take a look at a human neuron. What is the top end of a human neuron? And the truth is, we don't know. Because every time scientists push a neuron to what they believe is a limit, we are so advanced, we are so sophisticated, we do what humans do, is when we reach that perceived barrier, we morph and we adapt to open an entire new vista of bandwidth, and that we do it again and again and again.
Right.
What is the top end of the performance of a human neuron? It appears to be infinite. We appear to be infinitely scalable. And this where this came up, when
I'm going to repeat back to you what you said to me. I love like you talk this way. You're talking as a scientist, but you're actually speaking the vibration of mysticism. As divine spiritual beings, we're unlimited, and we haven't even begun to even tap into
no.
who we are, and we're already trying to give it away.
Well, this is the thing, and once we give it away, we can't get it back.
Right.
There was a time not that long ago, all of the medical books, all the biology books, they all said that the top end of human consciousness, human brain states, was 40 hertz, 40 cycles per second. They said the human brain cannot accommodate information, energy more than 40 cycles per second, 40 hertz. And then the Tibetan monks came along and they said, well, if we do a certain kind of meditation, we'll exceed that. And they bumped it up to 80 hertz, 80 cycles per second. And the scientists said, wow, okay, we were wrong, but it can't possibly be any more than that. And the monks said, well, if we do another meditation, and then they went to 100 cycles per second and had to come up with another brain state to
Yes.
accommodate that, called the gamma brain state.
Absolutely.
And then they said, okay, we can't do any more. And the monks said, well, if we do, you know where this is going.
Right.
They pushed the limit all the way up to 200 cycles per second from the 40 that had been
Right.
acknowledged. We now have a gamma brain state, a hyper gamma brain state. And a lot of people don't know this, Michael. Then they went to the other end of the spectrum. They slowed the brain state down to 0.05 hertz, less than 1 hertz, where many people, if you were in a hospital, you would be considered brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
And these monks were not dead. They were very awake, very conscious, very alive, but they consciously, and this is a brain state called the epsilon brain state.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're showing is that we're only beginning to understand the capacity and our ability to consciously self-regulate that capacity. And where, we could spend the whole program on this, but where this
No, but
really,
you're speaking my language. I love this. I go to you ever heard of BioCybernaut?
oh yeah, yeah.
Well, I go there about every 2 years just to up level my brain states. I produce a lot of delta waves naturally, but I do the alpha, I do the theta, I do the delta. But exactly what you're talking about, humanity has not even begun to touch the potential if there's a level of consistency, practice, intention, and interest.
And
And
these are all expressions of human divinity.
yes,
And now we're going to go back. What is divinity? Divinity is our ability to transcend perceived limitations, whatever
Yes.
life brings to our doorstep. Now we go back to the definition of evil. Evil is the denial of our divine processes, the denial of our divinity. And now we have a benchmark, Michael, because in the next 5 years, we are all going to be inundated with policies. Some may be mandated. I don't know. There are, it's on the table, but it
I
hasn't been
think
made
they
into
tried
law.
they tried that they tried a little with vaccines and things of that particular nature, tried to see how society was going to operate
Well,
under certain mandates.
that was round one, and I
Yeah,
think you're going to see it under a different
yeah,
guise, with different circumstances, and we're going to see the marketing that is going to strongly encourage us and indoctrinate us, and will be fed the information to lead us to believe these are good things for us. What we have to ask ourselves, and what I want my brothers and sisters to have, is a benchmark by which you can gauge the the relevance of what you're being told to your own life and make healthy decisions. Does the product that you're being encouraged to take into your body, does the practice, does the technology, does it deny your divinity? Does it deny your ability to imagine, create, communicate your creations with other people? Does it deny your ability to heal your own body, to love, to forgive, empathy, sympathy, compassion, all of those things? And now we've got something very real, a very real benchmark, and we can make wise choices rather than being blindly led. And I'm not saying, even knowing that, there are people that will go for the technology because it serves them
right.
in their life path and their life mission. And
It's a quick
yeah,
fix.
yeah.
It's,
So this is what the book is all about. And our publisher Hay House, I really I just want to give them a shout out, because it was an interesting journey. They're in your backyard right there, and
I know they did one of my books, the Transcendence book. They did one of my books. Yeah, they're good
yeah,
people.
yeah. Well, they've gone through a lot of changes,
Hmm.
and initially I got a little pushback on the title and the direction of the book,
I
and
remember you telling me.
yeah, all of a sudden, May of this year, there was a 180, and they recognized that this is a vital conversation. And not only did they embrace it, but they fast tracked it. Between the time I turned the manuscript in, and it's in the warehouse right now. They just won't release it until January. You could pre-order it on
Hmm.
Amazon,
Hmm.
and that first print run, I think, is going to sell out.
Hmm.
But between the time it showed up in the warehouse and when I turned it, was less than 6 months, and that's fast for a book in this day and age in this industry. And I applaud them. I am grateful to them, and I appreciate their love and support, because all this is going to be over within just a few years of our lives if we don't change this trajectory. And if we, I had a scientist say to me recently in a conference, he said, "Well, Gregg, isn't this the next step in human evolution?" And I said, "Absolutely not. It is
You're
an
talking about
evolution.
AI being the next
AI,
step. Oh,
AI, and
absolutely. I agree with you.
the
Yeah.
transhuman movement. It is a forced artificial evolution that denies us the gift of our humanness and our divinity. That's
Mhm.
not a natural form of evolution. He hadn't thought about it from that perspective. He wasn't a bad man. He was indoctrinated into the tech world to think we need to push these tech limits as far and as fast as we can, without really thinking of what the consequences are socially, psychologically, spiritually, certainly. The bottom line for all of us, I know we're coming up on our time here, and I just want to say that I'm going to acknowledge a lot of this conversation may be new for some people and may not be familiar with some of the topics, and may sound technical to some people. The beauty is you don't have to know anything that we're talking about. It all comes down to love for me. And
Hmm.
I think the question is
Hmm.
simply this: do we love ourselves enough? I'll be personal, and I'm going to look at my community right here. Do you love yourself enough to embrace the deep truth and the responsibility that comes with your humanness and your divinity? Do you love yourself enough to accept the divinity that was given to you when the first of our kind appeared on this planet 200,000 years ago? And the way we answer the question is not with a word, it's the way we live our lives. So every
Absolutely.
moment of every day, we either choose to affirm or we deny divinity in our lives. The way we speak to other people, the way we let them speak to us, how we nourish our bodies, how we care for our loved ones, those are all expressions of human divinity. So I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think our greatest task is probably to preserve and protect the gift of our humanness, the gift of our bodies that allows our divine expression. We can't express that divinity if we're not in the body. So that's what I wanted
speaking.
to say.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Two things. One, the great analogy of what you're saying of technology outstripping consciousness. When you look at all the weapons that are made, that
Yeah.
can blow up the entire world, countries and things of that particular nature. It's like we've created this technology, this polluted technology of destruction, and individuals don't necessarily have the consciousness of the love, the compassion, the deep sense of unity among all beings, the preciousness of life. But we've unleashed this technology that can destroy so many people, and so that's a wonderful
Yeah.
analogy of where we're going with this transhuman situation as well. The technology is going to outstrip consciousness, and then we won't even have the activated, expanded awareness that is necessary. And the other thing I wanted you to talk about just for a moment is,
Oh,
you
sure.
talk about the fact that within our DNA itself, there is language that talks about our divine, that we are divine, that we are the image and likeness of God, that's not just
Yeah.
metaphor or prose or religious
No.
talk. That's actual embedded in us.
That's a whole conversation. We could do a whole podcast on that. So
But give him a
I
little
want to
taste.
honor. I will. I want to honor our time. So I'm going to encapsulate this briefly. Let me first say my primary degree, I said, as an earth scientist, but I excelled in. I happened to be a geologist at a time when computers were coming into vogue, and at a time when not many people knew how to program computers. And so I excelled in early programming and the early computers. And I specialized in an area that is called pattern recognition, developing pattern recognition software. Initially, it was during the Cold War years, and there's a whole story about how I ended up there and why I left.
Mhm.
But I learned a lot, and I had access to technology uh, working in that industry. And it was during the same time that the computers were coming into vogue that the first printouts of the human genome became available. I mean, before that, we couldn't see the DNA, all the CTAs and Gs on a computer screen, and they happened at the same time. And the first time I looked at the genome on the computer screen, I knew that it wasn't random. There was
Mhm.
information encoded in there. I had to cross traditional boundaries between my studies of ancient languages and linguistics and genetics and chemistry uh, to make use of what those patterns might be. And the bottom line is this: there's a mathematic link between the languages of our past, like cuneiform, Sanskrit, Arabic, Biblical Hebrew. There's a mathematic link between those and the elements that make DNA: hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And that mathematic link means those things are interchangeable, which means that you can actually take the letters from the ancient alphabets
Mm.
and place them into the strand of DNA in place of the hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon. And the new book actually walks the reader through this if they want that detail. And when you follow the instructions, Michael, it's a mind blower. In a 3,000-year-old text called the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, was
Mhm.
my guide. When you follow those instructions using the best science of the modern world, crossing those traditional boundaries that cost me my reputation as a scientist,
Mhm.
I blew it when I did that.
Mhm.
But what it reveals is there is an intelligent message in the DNA in every cell of every human that walks this earth. And it's in layers. And the first layer literally reads, it's not a metaphor, it literally reads the words God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. It doesn't say who God is or where God comes from, but it tells us that we're not random. It
Right.
tells us, and we forget who we are. If we get lost, we need look no further than the 50 trillion cells inside of every human body to know that we are God eternal within the body. And I'll tell you why I share that in our live events, Michael, because once I lead my group to derive that for themselves, I'm not saying it, we go through it together.
Yes.
And they see that, then they have a choice. They either have to reject and deny what they've seen, or they embrace it and rearrange their story to accommodate what they've seen. And what that does is it gives us the opportunity to change the way we think of ourselves. Now, when life brings us a problem, when the doctor says there's something not working correctly in the body, or when a relationship, when we are betrayed in our most intimate relationships, or when
Yes.
our abundance channels seem like they're taking a break for a while for whatever reason, what we say is not what am I going to do? How does God eternal within the body address what I've been given, the challenge that I've been given? How does God eternal within the body heal this issue emotionally, physically, biologically, psychologically, whatever it is? And this is one of those places where the words probably break down, Michael, and someone just has to experience it to know. But
Yeah.
what I'll say is it makes a huge difference because it changes our story.
Yes.
In our story, we live our lives. We choose our friendships. We choose our careers, our politics. The people we share our lives with, we're all adults here, the people we share our bed with. It's all determined by the way we've been taught to think of ourselves. And when we begin to shift that story, it changes the way that we deal with whatever happens to us in the world. And I believe it changes it in a positive way, because that
Yeah.
could go either way.
Yeah.
It changes it in a positive way. For
Yeah.
people who are biblically inclined, it supports biblical passages. For example, I think it's 1 Corinthians 3:16, where the apostle is saying, "Know ye not that the Spirit of God lives within your body?" I
Yeah.
mean, they're saying it right there, that your
Right.
body is a temple. Know ye not that your
Temple
body is a temple? So,
of the living
as
God, the temple of the living God.
of the living God. So,
Yeah.
as an amateur archaeologist, what I can say is this: every ancient civilization, when I take groups into the Andes in southern Peru or Egypt or Greece or wherever it is, and our ancestors built temples. Those temples were built in layers. And the innermost layer, the innermost sanctum, is where the deepest wisdom and the greatest secrets were always held. And it was called the Holy of Holies.
Holy of holies.
Well, we, as the temple of the living God, have not one Holy of Holies. We have 50 trillion Holy of Holies, because the nucleus of every cell holds the DNA that tells us that we are God eternal
Yeah.
within the body. And
Yes.
this is why I think it's so important to teach our young people to a deeper respect for the gift of their bodies and their humanness, because when they're given no reason to think differently, then they're given no reason to consider what they take into their bodies and what they place upon their bodies,
Hmm.
because they're taught that they are flawed. But
Yes.
this, I know, for some people, a different way of thinking, and for some people, it's uncomfortable, and for other people, it's right up their alley. If you need a reason to think differently, it's in the cells of our bodies, and it mirrors what we're not, even from a religious perspective, from an information perspective.
Yeah.
And I believe it is, now that I'm just doing this from memory. I think it is 1 Corinthians 3, 16. People, and then the verse following clarifies. It clarifies even deeper. So, in many ways, we're being led to the same outcome. There's something rare, beautiful, ancient, sacred, powerful, precious about every one of us. And I think when we begin to embrace that, Michael, we live our lives to reflect that. And I think it's good for everyone. It's a good thing for
Right.
all of us.
It transcends skepticism and it transcends believing. We're actually awakening to a reality that's
You know,
beyond
if
religion.
you next time I am blessed to be at Agape, I will lead our community in a very high level briefly through that process. And it is a powerful process when you can actually see the code of the DNA become the letters of the root alphabets of our most cherished spiritual traditions. And then there's a message that was left for us. Because, when I think about this as an artist, when an artist finishes something, a musician finishes a song, or a painter finishes a canvas, or a sculptor, or I finish a book, when the creator is proud of what they have created, they place a signature on it.
Right.
The science tells us we are not the product of random mutations, that there has been an intervention in our ancient past that gave us the mutations for our humanness. I would hope that who or whatever is responsible for that was proud enough at the end of that creation to put a signature. And the message, God eternal within the body, for me, fulfills that hope. That is the signature, who or whatever. And interestingly, the name of that is written in our bodies is the same name. It's spelled the same way that we see in so many of the ancient texts. So maybe I need to close there. That was
I
what
think
this book is all
that was
about.
it, because we don't want to become transhuman and deny all this beauty and love and infinite potential that was within us. Just as Jesus quoted, "Is it not written from the Old Testament that we are gods?" And as you indicated, when we are dealing with the challenge is saying, what is it that you must become now to transcend this challenge?
Yeah.
And so it's all about becoming and activating rather than dumbing ourselves down and becoming so transhuman that we're no longer ourselves. You laid it out beautifully today, Gregg. So
Thank
appreciate
you,
it, man.
Thank you, Michael. Well, thank you for trusting me with your community. Your community is my family. I love you, my brother, and I love everyone that's watching. And I just want to thank everyone for doing all you can. It's a tough time in the world right now, and it's also a beautiful time. And I think if we allow ourselves to embrace the deep truth of who we are and embrace our human divinity, we come through this time of challenge with a soft landing and a glowing appreciation for who we are. And I think that is perhaps what this little window of time is all about. So thank you all for doing all you're doing to make the best world possible. Yeah.
Well, tell us once again the title of the book. Tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, the title of the book is called Pure Human, The Hidden Truth of Our Divinity, Power, and Destiny. We didn't even talk about the destiny part. The destiny is that we are wired to live our divinity. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah. You can buy the book on Amazon. Our website, Gregg Braden, GreggBraden.com, or wherever books are sold. And we exceeded our time today, Brother Michael. I want to honor and respect your time.
Hey, life is good, man. We exceeded that which does not exist.
Cool.
Perceived limitations.
Well, not only do I love the way you talk, but I love the way you think. So thank you, brother.
I'll see you on the road. I'll see you in the dreams. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful. Blessings. This is our moment to practice the art and science of meditation. And what you have heard in our conversation, what you have intuited, what you have heard me teach for many, many, many years, is that the art and science of meditation provides the forum, the possibility, and the practice for us to become greater expressions of ourself, to tap into our limitless potential. If, in fact, we were to make the God anthropomorphic, God would hate unactivated potential. And obviously there is no God to be offended like that, because God is love. But we have infinite potential. And the way to access that potential is to extract our attention from the world as it appears to be. Even extract our attention away from our own opinions, our own beliefs, our own points of view, our own positionalities and perceptions, which is what meditation helps us do. And to actually have a true insight into that which is real beyond our thought about that which is real. I've said over the years that most people do not have an experience of reality. They have an experience of their thoughts and opinions about reality. That's their experience, and it's very limited. When you meditate, you're freeing yourself from that so that you can have a direct encounter with that which is real. If you're sincere, if you're consistent, and remain available. It's practice. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Back is erect, not rigid. Slight smile on the face. You like this. It's activating tonic chemicals flowing through the body temple. That little smile. And I want you to be present with an intention to activate potential. That is an intention to become more of yourself. That is to obtain in your awareness an insight as to your real nature and being. That boils down to this. We are intending to wake up to our real nature. That's where our attention is. We're intending to wake up to our true nature. The breath of the body temple can serve as a talisman to keep us present. Meaning, as you are aware that the body's breathing, notice the inhalation, notice the exhalation, notice the space between the two. Where is that happening? It's happening presently. So the body temple breathing and your awareness of it allows you to be present, not to fly off into the future or to fly what you might think is back to the past. You're right here with your intention and your breath. Be still. You are essentially holding a space for your unfoldment, what you are becoming. Not merely seeking to navigate and manipulate present circumstances, but to allow the next stage of your becoming to transcend circumstances and conditions as an unlimited, illimitable being. You. Body's breathing, you're embracing your intention and being present with the breath. I'm living in the feeling of, what am I becoming? And arising from this stillness is a greater embodiment of who we are, where we are, when we are, and why we are. We're right here, right now, at the center of the cosmos. It's an emanation of the great what, the great presence. Waking up to our divinity and allowing it to shine. His beauty and His love, His compassion, generosity and dynamic peace, and more. We give thanks for these precious moments together, and we allow it to be so. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much. And your soul is so happy that you stopped for a few moments to sup at the divine table so that you are becoming more you. There's something beautiful about you. You are an emanation of beauty itself. Let your light so shine today before humanity that when they see you, they see your divinity. They see the presence. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. I truly hope that you are enjoying Take Back Your Mind podcast. The Take Back Your Mind podcast is sponsored primarily by the Agape International Spiritual Center. In other words, everything that you see in terms of the staff that puts this together, the editing, the equipment, all of this is sponsored by our Agape International Spiritual Center. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm inviting you to support the sponsor. Support Agape. Simply go to agapelive.com and make a donation. And say in the donation that you are supporting the podcast. It allows us to keep broadcasting. It allows us to keep putting these magnificent moments together with these wonderful people that I get to interview. We keep having the possibility of updating the equipment that's necessary and providing the wonderful content that many of you are writing in and saying, I really love the podcast. Support the podcast. Support the sponsor. Agape International Spiritual Center. agapelive.com. You can also text to donate. You can text the word give to 424-321-6243 and put podcast so that we know that you're really supporting this wonderful podcast. Our secondary sponsor is Adaptozen, Adaptozen. This is my superfood greens. It's nutritionally dense because I teach spirit, mind, and body. We want our body temples to be healthy. So one of the products is my superfood greens. You can go to nutrarise.com. Those three little lines you see, you hit those three little lines and you'll see Adaptozen. There's two products, my superfood greens and a product called Elevate, which are organic mushrooms for your health. You can put both in your smoothies, so that you have main ingredients for the health of your body temple. These are our sponsors. Primary sponsor, Agape International Spiritual Center. Secondary sponsor, Adaptozen. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be wise. Circulate and share. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.